and life, there are places where, once you step inside, you'll never leave with your mind intact. I didn't know that when I took the job at this movie theater. At first, it was just a regular job, an easy one with a stable income for someone young like me, especially given the troubled past I was trying to hide. But I soon realized that this wasn't an ordinary theater. It was a world of its own, where rules didn't just exist to maintain order but to keep us safe from unimaginable horrors. Let me tell you my story, and after you hear it, decide for yourself if you're brave enough to work here. My name is C. I'm 21 years old, and I've worked at this movie theater for over 3 years. The reason I started working here wasn't particularly special. I didn't have many options. Someone with a minor criminal record like mine, with the silly mistakes of youth, doesn't easily find a decent job. So when I found the ticket attendant position at this theater, I jumped at the opportunity. But I had no idea this wasn't an ordinary place. On my first day, David, the manager, called me into his office and talked about some strange rules. These weren't the usual rules like keeping the place clean or ensuring security. These were mysterious rules, and among them, there was one I could never forget. Never open the door to Theater 3 after the movie starts. I asked David why, but he just smiled. Just follow the rules, he said, his tone calm but meaningful. Sooner or later, you'll understand. The real story began on a hot summer night. I remember clearly because it was the first time I was on the night shift alone. The theater was silent, with only a few late-night movies still playing. I was cleaning the lobby area when I suddenly heard a noise coming from Theater 3. Loud banging, repeatedly, as if someone was desperately trying to escape. I froze, my heart pounding. The banging was so intense I could feel the door shaking. Then I heard it. A terrified voice from inside. "Help me, please, open the door. We can't get out." A woman's voice, sobbing, panicked. I ran to the door, and smoke started seeping out from under it. Thick black smoke with the acrid smell of burning. I could feel my throat starting to tighten. In that moment, I forgot everything. I only thought about saving the people inside. I grabbed the door handle, but just as I was about to open it, David appeared. He grabbed my hand, forcefully pulling me away from the door. "Never open Theater 3, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's just an illusion. Trust me, everything will be fine. But there are people inside. They're trapped. They need help," I shouted, trying to break free from his grip. But David just shook his head, his eyes showing a seriousness I had never seen before. "Theater 3 is dangerous. See, it will try to deceive you, but you must never open the door." I stood still, horrified and confused. The smoke was still coming from under the door, and the cries for help continued. But David didn't move. He stood there, silent, waiting, and then, 20 minutes later, the movie ended. The door opened, and the audience walked out as if nothing had happened. No one was panicked. There was no sign of fire. I looked at David, but he only said, "You see, not everything you see is real." After the incident with Theater 3, I started paying more attention to the other rules. Each rule seemed to have a hidden story behind it. One of the strangest rules was, if you see someone dressed as a movie character leading children away from the lobby, report it immediately to management. At the time, I thought it was just a silly rule for costume events. But then, on the opening day of Avengers: Infinity War, I understood the real reason. While working in the lobby, I saw someone dressed as Iron Man leading a group of children. At first, I didn't think much of it, until I realized that the children weren't talking, weren't laughing. They just followed Iron Man as if hypnotized. I felt something was wrong and ran to report it to David. He rushed out of his office and went straight to Iron Man strangely. As soon as he pulled the person in the Iron Man suit into a back room, the children snapped out of it. They looked around, confused, as if they had just woken up from a dream. I stood there, unable to comprehend what had just happened. David didn't explain. He only said, "You don't need to understand. Just follow the rules." After those events, I couldn't stop thinking about what was happening at this theater. I knew something was very wrong, and David was the only one with answers. I decided to confront him. One evening, after the theater closed, I walked into David's office and demanded he explain everything. David sat silently for a while, then sighed. "See, I know you've seen many strange things, and I can't hide it from you any longer. But you must understand. What's happening here is beyond our comprehension." He began telling me about his past. 13 years ago, he was just like me, curious and skeptical about these rules. And then, one fateful night, he broke the most important rule. He opened the door to Theater 3. When he did, horrifying things escaped. They weren't human but forces he never wanted to mention again. David and the others had to struggle to push them back. And from that day on, he swore never to let it happen again. "You see," he said, his eyes filled with sorrow, "these rules aren't just to maintain order. They're to protect us. And if you don't follow them, you'll never be able to escape this place." What David said made me reflect deeply. This theater wasn't just a place to watch movies. It was a gateway to another world, where reality and illusion intertwined. The rules here weren't meant to control us, but to protect us from things we couldn't understand. After David's story, I decided I would follow every rule. I had seen and felt enough to know that this place contained things beyond human imagination. Sometimes, in life, not everything needs to be fully understood. There are things we just have to accept to survive. Working at this theater has changed my life forever. I learned that in life, there are rules that seem meaningless, but in reality, they save us from unexpected disasters. What happens at this theater is clear proof of that. There are other realities that humans should never interfere with, and sometimes, following unexplainable rules is the only way to survive. If you ever find yourself in a place where everything seems too strange to believe, remember one thing: never break the rules you don't understand, because they might be the only thing standing between you and destruction.